Today we are in Galena, Illinois, a town that has a ton of Ulysses S. Grant history. He lived here before the Civil War. He came back to here after and was even gifted a home by the citizens of this town. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all begins right now. Right here on Main Street, they have a really great statue of the general slash president, two-time president. He was actually in the military first, served, and then came out for several years and then went back in. So he lived here before. His father had a shoe shop, I believe, here. You can see here he's sitting there with a pocket watch. And behind them they have a whole bunch of his history of what he did in this town on this plaque behind him. So you can kind of get an idea of... He was actually born in Point Pleasant, Ohio. So in 1853 his father had made it here and set up Grant and Perkins, which was a leather goods store here on Main Street. Then they rented a home for $100 a year on 121 South High Street down here. Grant moves to Galena with his wife and 4 children, Julia. And then it says, his cigar, bow tie, and boots are on display at the U.S. Grant Museum, so we'll have to definitely check that out. He joined the Civil War as a colonel in 1861. And it says 9 from Galena actually joined. All 9 are shown here in the painting of the Union. And there he is. It says, the rank President Lincoln promoted to Grant during the war, Lieutenant General. Then over here, runs his presidential campaign in 1868. Learns that he won while he was at Elihu Washburn's home. Sworn in as the president in 1869 when he was 46 years old. He lived here for several years, would come and go from the home that they gave him here, but he ended up living out his days in New York at a cottage in New York. Very good image of him, and I love that they have him on a bench where anybody coming by or visiting can sit down with him. So I'm going to go check out his house today. Katie's under the weather. Check out his house and the museum, some of his stuff in it. Most of the time that Grant would have spent here would have been directly after the Civil War. He would have came home to the house that we're going to see right after the Civil War. Even now it's a quiet road up to his home. And there's the home that was gifted to him for his, well, basically winning the Civil War, as you can imagine. He would have been in high popularity after that, but here we have Ulysses S. Grant's home, suggested donation, and it is a National Historical Place now. We're going to start down in the hill of the property because I noticed they have some busts and statues, and that will lead us right into the front door of the house. There's Mrs. Grant. It's very nice. Literally a house at the top of the hill. And you can see the whole town below. Here's a statue to Engineer Eli Parker, Brigadier General Commissioner of Indian Affairs. And then Julia Grant up here. She was the First Lady from 1869 to 1877. It looks like there's a couple of buildings here on the property we'll be checking out. There's the house. See that on the front door? All right.
Welcome to the Grant's Home State Historic Site. And this is not the place where President Grant was born. That's a home in Ohio. Father was a tanner and a leather worker, and growing up, Ulysses hated the family business. Luckily for him, Dad valued education. Figured he might as well send his oldest son to college for free. Using political connections, he has Ulysses enrolled at West Point, a military academy in New York. Grant graduates 1843 as the 21st in his class. 39 people. Average scores get him posted to the Jefferson Barracks outside of St. Louis, city's West Point roommate Frederick Dent was from. Dent gets posted farther out west, so he invites his pal Ulysses to go check in on the family. Grant goes out hoping for a home-cooked meal, then he comes back with a bonus, having met Dent's little sister Julia. 3 months later, he asks her to marry him. It's in part because he's off to serve in Mexico. While leaving, Grant was certain this was a show of force at the border. He was convinced he was coming right back for proper courtship and a nice long engagement. And he gets the long engagement. The Mexican-American War takes him away for the next 4 years. Grant will fight in 13 of the 14 major battles before returning to St. Louis to get married. Wow. For the next 4 years, the Army bounces Ulysses and Julia around together. And then in 1852, they post him out to Washington State. Incredibly far away, very difficult to travel to, and back then there wasn't much out there to begin with. He's miserable alone out west. He hated to be away from his wife and kids, and at that point, one of the children he's never seen before. So Grant leaves the Army, joins his family in St. Louis, and there he takes up farming. And he fails spectacularly. Tried some other jobs as well, wasn't very good at them either. So as a last resort in 1860, he and Julia pack up their 4 children and they move to Galena for him to work in a leather goods store. Owned by his father, still living in Ohio, stores managed here by Ulysses' 2 younger brothers. So he gets to work for them as their store clerk. 11 months later, the Civil War begins. When President Lincoln calls for volunteers, Grant feels he owes it to the country to rejoin the Army. That puts him on a pretty quick climb to the top. He'll eventually become the commanding general over the entire U.S. forces, the man most people credit with winning the war. To thank him for that service, 13 Galena businessmen put money together. They buy this modest 3,300 square foot home for the staggering price of $2,500.
Wow.
They give the home to Grant fully furnished as a gift.
Wow.
And he and his family love it here. They call this their home for the next 16 years. But that turns into a very busy time for them. In it, the Grants only get to spend about 1.5 years total actually living here.
Wow.
They get the home in 1865 when Grant is still in charge of the Army. Within weeks, they're back in Washington, D.C. 3 years later, the family comes back while Grant campaigns for president, but then they spend the next 8 years in the White House.
Oh,
After that, Ulysses and Julia come back. Kids are all grown up, so the Grants visit with friends here, and they start planning a much-needed vacation. Always wanted to see more of the world, finally have the time and money to travel. Afterwards, the Grants return to Galena, and then in 1881 they moved to New York to be closer to some of those adult children while surrounding themselves with better business opportunities. It's in New York in 1885 where Grant passes away from throat cancer. Stay open as a way to remember their parents. During the Great Depression, Illinois takes over that mission, and the state has been managing the home ever since. With those few changes of hands, 90% of the furniture here is original.
wow.
We did have to reproduce the carpeting, wallpaper, and window coverings throughout the home. Unlike the furniture, none of that was going to look good after 160 years. If we could, we tried to copy what the Grants were using. Where we guessed, we picked patterns available from their time. Great place to relax and hang out with the kids. On the center writing table in there, we have a little gift to Mrs. Grant from the men who bought the house. It's a Bible weighing nearly 15 pounds. Leafed in gold on the cover, Mrs. U.S. Grant, 1865. Off to the left-hand side of the room is a statue by John Rogers called the Council of War. President Lincoln is sitting in the middle of the statue, General Grant standing on the left, and across from him is Secretary of War Edwin Stanton with that magnificent beard. When Grant is appointed to be the commanding general, he's promoted to 3 stars. First time our country will have lieutenant general in its ranks since George Washington. And then just past the statue, we have a small round metal tray, the general's cigar stand. Grant was known to smoke on average 10 to 15 cigars per day. Many Civil War soldiers also take up the habit, trying everything they can think of to calm their nerves and cover the awful smells surrounding them throughout the war. Once you're satisfied with the first view of the library, we can spread out into the parlor next.
So this is the library?
Yes, ma'am.
What is this usually used for?
Hats, coats, scarves. Those 3 pieces right there. You can actually see one of the chairs with the hall stand here.
Wow, this is so cool. The kids actually gifted this to the town in memory of their parents.
Pardon me, sir. Thank you. Parlors are usually the biggest and the best looking room in the home. This is where you spend time with your visitors. The original wooden seating here was reupholstered using the same material that was on the chairs to begin with. Most of them are covered with horsehair, manes and tails woven together with silk. I think it's pretty, turns out to be very strong, but as you pass the sample, if you feel the edges, it's not always very comfortable. Some of the chairs might also seem low to the ground. 160 years ago, people didn't get as tall as we do today. Grant was an inch above average for men at 5'8". Julia, barely 5 feet tall, wore size 4 shoes. General's favorite chair was the big green padded one. He liked it so much, he'll take it to the White House with him. And then 8 years later, it comes back home. That's when he and Julia start to plan their little vacation. What begins as a trip to England, visiting their daughter Nellie, transforms into a 2.5-year long, more than 30 country world tour. They set sail from Philadelphia, travel around the planet, and return to California, where Grant poses for the painting. Throughout most of his life, he weighs about 140 pounds, but when they come back from vacation, he weighs 195 pounds.
Wow. Good eating.
Good trip, yeah. So they get back home, and Ulysses and Julia turn around almost immediately to do the right thing. They take a second vacation. This time heading to the south towards Cuba and the Caribbean, and then spending time over in Mexico, where the Mexican government will present Grant with 2 amazing landscapes done by Jose Velasco. The Chickering square grand piano did not belong to the Grants. They had one almost identical, but we don't know where it ended up. You can actually see it right here. Julia and daughter Nellie both enjoyed to play, both enjoyed playing. Grant, on the other hand, was pretty quick to point out that he was tone deaf, and the general liked to joke about it. He'd tell you he could only recognize 2 songs. One was Yankee Doodle.
Oh.
The other one wasn't. Any questions for the parlor? If you're hungry for more, we'll go into the dining room next. Do you know the story of Noah's flood? God promised that the man would bring the flood not to do it again. The artist is kind of harking back to that allegory. Dining room table is set to be fancy. We like to show off the exquisite Haviland Company dishes. This is a custom pattern that Julia created especially for their daughter Nellie's White House wedding. Because the Grants pay for the set with their own money, they get to bring it back home. But on the sideboard, we have a copy of a plate from the Grant White House pattern. Presidents don't normally pay for that, so it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to us. Meant to stay in Washington, D.C. to be reused or put out on display. 2 of my favorite things in the house have to be the incredible bronze vase and the carved teak stand underneath. Gifts during the world tour to Mrs. Grant from the people of Yokohama, Japan.
Gifts.
Julia was very popular in the White House. She was known for throwing dinner parties there that could last nearly 3 hours long. She'd serve upwards of 30 small courses a meal and often had an intermission somewhere in the middle. Julia was also well educated. She's the first president's wife to write an autobiography. And Mrs. Grant becomes friends with Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She was a strong and loud supporter for women's rights. Julia is also the first president's wife while in the White House that newspapers started to call the First Lady of the land. Paintings in this room, all copies of smaller black and white photos. The one of Julia is special because she's looking almost directly out of the frame. Mrs. Grant had a lazy eye, and she was very self-conscious about it. We almost always find her hiding the fact by posing sideways for cameras, like sitting here with her husband and their 4 children. As with many families, to either side we have the grandparents. And like some sets, these in-laws didn't get along well. Hannah and Jesse Grant from Ohio were middle class, business owners, and they hated slavery. Ellen and Frederick Dent from Missouri, a little bit more upper class. Their plantation, Whitehaven, was nearly 1,000 acres, and they owned slaves. The Dents also host the wedding for Julia and Ulysses. Because her parents are slaveholders, his parents refused to attend the wedding. It takes the Grants years to warm up to Julia. Eventually, they do come to love her deeply. My guess is steps might have been taken towards that as the grandchildren start to arrive.
Yeah.
Middle part of the tour is self-guided. In a moment, you're going to go through the door and then up the stairs to the right on your own. We have 5 bedrooms and a dressing room upstairs. When you're ready to see me again, make your way carefully down the back set of steps, and we will meet up and finish in the kitchen.
So now we're going to head up the stairs. Nice twisty staircase. Here's the dressing room. You can see the sewing machine and everything. And that would be right off of Grant's room. Room down the hall was Jesse's room. He was the youngest son. So his parents would have been right down here at the end of the hall. And then this was Ulysses S. Grant Jr.'s room. Kind of basic. And he also had a dressing room over there. This was Frederick's room. He was the oldest son, Frederick Dent Grant, with his mother's maiden name as his middle name. Then his sitting / dressing room would have been through that door in there. And then this would have been their daughter's Nellie's room. So now we're coming down the steps. Here's another view once we get to the bottom of the stairs, because there's another doorway into the library that we originally saw from that door.
The back corner.
Oh, wow. Copper lined, wow.
Fancy schmancy.
Very. Copper lined bathtub back there, wow.
Being built in, it comes with a drain as well.
This is the kitchen. Would she have done any cooking? Did Julie do any cooking?
She was able to. She could put a meal together. She could fill your plate. We joke that you probably might not go back for seconds.
Yeah.
But when they get this house, they are celebrities.
That's what I figured.
And so it's in the papers where they're going to travel, when, for how long, where they'll be staying. When they get there, there are usually stacks of invitations waiting for them.
Oh, for people wanting to have dinners with them and
lunch,
makes
and
sense.
tea, and whatever.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, they both write in their memoirs about having to eat many meals a day while traveling.
That explains it. That explains the 50 pounds.
Right? If you come and lean over the rail my way to look through this left-hand door, all the way in the back corner, we have the built-in copper-lined bathtub. They collected the rain from the gutters outside into a pit called a cistern. Pump attached out back where you can fill up your buckets, haul the water around to heat it on the stove, and then start making trips to fill up the tub. That much effort involved meant families usually bathed once a week, whether you need the bath or not, all sharing the same water. Dad got to go first. It's good to be dad. Mom comes next, and then the kids, oldest down to the youngest. So at the end of the night, when it's time to empty out the muddy tub, parents had to be very careful. Make sure they're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. No live-in servants here for the Grants. They're never really in the home long enough to need round-the-clock staff. Julia can hire day help, local people paid to be here part-time doing chores, and then going back home. They would have had some kitchen gadgets. My favorite is the hand mixer, or egg beater. Apple peelers haven't changed much in 160 years. And we also have a double cherry pitter. I'll get your pies ready in half the time. Monday was laundry day. Tuesday, the ironing day. Sad irons on the mantle weigh 6 to 14 pounds each. They only hold heat for about 3 minutes. You have to get as many as you can heating on the stove, and then you'll spend most of the day exchanging them on and off until you're wrinkle free. But you can probably skip the gym that night. And then walk-in pantries are almost necessary for homes. We're going to keep some of the less perishable food in there. We also have a root cellar beneath the kitchen. Shelves are going to hold most of the kitchen items. Lowest ones usually bigger to give us space to prepare our meals. And then our top 2 shelves hold some examples of Galena pottery, made locally between the 1840s and the 1890s when this was a huge lead mining region. Safe bet that most, if not all of that, is lead glazed. Not great for kitchens because that will poison us.
Pretty cool experience. I love seeing presidential homes and things like that, presidential libraries, so this is great. I want to go up this walkway a little ways because I saw a carving of Grant. Check that out. All right, we're going to go into town, see another statue of him, and then we're going to go to the museum they have in town with some of his belongings. We've made it over to the park. And right up this hill, they have a great statue of the general. They have several pieces of artillery up here from the Civil War. You can see a cannon over here. There he is. It says Grant, our citizen.